Welcome back to the podcast today. And on today's episode, I welcome David, a previous guest. Glad to have him back. I know he's got a ton of value. I'm always excited to learn from this man. And we're going to be talking about purpose and meaning and much, much more, I'm sure. So, a quick introduction to David, and then we'll dive straight on in. So, David is the fierce empathy coach after nearly taking his own life and experiencing a divine wake up call. David left his successful corporate career to reinvent himself, rebuild his family, and redefine what was possible in his personal and professional life. He now serves in a variety of capacities as a multi passionate serial entrepreneur, high performance men's coach, small business consultant, and keynote speaker. So, David, welcome back to the show today. For those who may not know you or familiar with your work, gave a little bit of an introduction there. Could you tell us a little bit more about actually how you started going about redefining your life, like some of the things that kind of took place in that process?
Absolutely, Johnny. Thank you for having me, brother. And yeah, I'm grateful to be here, and hopefully, this conversation is something that is useful in the lives of anyone that's looking to redefine themselves. Because for most of my life, Johnny, I didn't realize that it was actually possible. You see all these things on social media, and especially just growing up and looking at people that inspire us, and looking at the lives of extraordinary men and women. It's really challenging sometimes because you feel like you're stuck in a pattern or in a loop. You're stuck in oftentimes what we refer to as a fixed mindset, where you're just stuck and you don't know how to make the changes because everything that you do doesn't create the results. And I remember distinctly when before I had gone through much of the transformation I've gone through, and I'm still going through to this day. It was this consistent feeling of waking up and dreading getting out of bed, having to go to a job, to work for someone else, to make money for somebody else in something that was passionless, felt purposeless, meaningless. And you consistently look yourself in the mirror, and it's just this dreary feeling of almost meaninglessness. And you're wondering why you're here. You're wondering what your purpose is. You're wondering when life is going to get better, and you're struggling with bills, and maybe you're married or you're not, you've got kids or you don't, whatever your situation is in life. You can get to a point where you become somewhat disillusioned and you just are going through the motions. And so for me, redefining my life came on the back end of a lot of deep internal work, of really giving myself permission to define the man that I wanted to be. Instead of doing what everyone else said you're supposed to do, I got crystal clear on what I wanted for my life, and I started asking different set of questions.
Okay. So yeah, like it sounded like the questions have been like a really, really powerful one for you.
Mhm.
And then like using that to ultimately like shape. How did you find the transition? Obviously you're working for someone else. And I know because I know there's a lot of people who are like in that space. I've worked for many years in a career, and some people want to make that jump into like kind of entrepreneurship.
Mhm.
How did you find like that process? Because it sounded like you had that job and now obviously you're doing what you love. It sounds really exciting. I know it's like really exciting, just the passion you give. But yeah, how did you find that jump?
So the jump was just as difficult as it sounds. I mean, it's terrifying because you're going from what you've known. And a lot of times people use this term comfort zone, right? We hear that all the time in personal development. You've got to get out of your comfort zone. You got to get out of your comfort zone. And for me, I think you and I think very similar, Johnny, when people would say that, it would go through my mind and I would say, well, what in the world am I supposed to do if everything in my life is uncomfortable? How can I get out of my comfort zone if there's no comfort in my life, right? You look around at your health, you look at your finances, you look at your relationships, and everyone's like, well, you got to get out of your comfort zone. And I'll never forget, it was a day I was actually driving to the grocery store, and I was listening to this book called Hardwiring Happiness. And I wasn't really listening to it so much as, sometimes you'll listen to something in the background and then a
Yeah.
thought will come. And
Mm.
and so I was kind of in this daze, if you will. And I had this thought: it's not about your comfort zone, it's about your familiar zone. And that was the day that things really, really shifted for me, Johnny, because what I stopped doing was focusing on this idea, man, I've got to get uncomfortable, but I'm already uncomfortable in every area. How do I get uncomfortable? And I started to understand, because I've always been obsessed with neuroscience and behavioral psychology and why we believe what we believe and how to transform our belief system to create different results. And so when I started attaching to this term familiar zone, I started to think about how we, myself in that situation for me, I was trying to think about, okay, how can I step into something that's unfamiliar? How do I get out of what I'm familiar with into what I'm unfamiliar with? And that was the shift for me, because I realized that the resistance that we all feel is simply because what we're wanting to do is unfamiliar to us.
Mm.
And so as I was really chewing on this word, Johnny, I started to think about the word family, right? And for those of us that are blessed to have a great family, even if you don't have a great family, I'm sure you've got at least one or two people that you would probably call close knit, like a family member.
Mm.
Family is only created when it's fought for and it's cultivated through time and trust and investment in that relationship where there's tremendous amounts of safety, right? And so, this internal thing that we have, our subconscious mind, if you will, that is resistant to change, where everyone's saying we gotta transform our mind, we gotta rewire our subconscious mind, we have to fix our mindset. All of that sounded great to me, but I needed something practical. I was like, what does that actually look like for me to be able to change?
Mm.
And as I started to think about familiar zone and family, familial, I started to think about, well, I have to acquaint myself with someone that I'm unfamiliar with, something that I'm unfamiliar with for long enough that it finally becomes familiar. If you've never been to a specific restaurant before, you're unfamiliar with it. But if you go there once, you become familiar with it. And you go there again, you become more familiar with it. And you go there again and again and again and again until you are completely familiar and comfortable. You know the name of all the servers, you know the chef, you know the owner, you know the table, you know your favorite meals. You become familiar with it. But the only way that that happens is when you step outside of your familiar zone. And that means that you have to start taking steps towards transforming by doing things that other people would say are uncomfortable. Really, what that means is you just have to do things that you're unfamiliar with. And when you start to do things that you're unfamiliar with, you'll start to become familiar with them. And
Mm.
over time, when you become familiar with them, your subconscious mind will let go of this warning flag that throws up that says, warning, warning, do not proceed. Like, don't do this. This isn't normal.
Mm.
Why? Because it's trying to protect us, it's trying to keep us safe. And if you recognize it's simply trying to keep you safe, you can actually nurture it to a point where it says, oh, now I'm familiar with this. This makes a lot of sense. I'm more comfortable here. And you actually transform your identity and become someone different than who you were previously.
Mm. I love that reframe. I've not heard it like that, but yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me because yeah, the comfort zone is one that I've heard a lot, and it's that's the typical. You got this circle, and it's like you're in it. It's like you got to break out. But yeah, what you were saying, obviously, there was a lot of discomfort. There was a lot of my life. It sounded like you were saying your life was not it was not good. Like you didn't enjoy it, and it's like that.
Yeah.
But that was the familiarity, and it was like, how do I get to the unfamiliarity, which is
Mhm.
out there? And I like the restaurant analogy as well, because or going to something new every time, right?
Yeah.
Um,
But to your question of like the transition, I wanted to start a business. So that was very, very unfamiliar to me.
mm,
And so for me to take that leap, just to wake up one day and be like, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to start my own business, I wouldn't recommend anybody do that. Don't do that. Not a good idea. What I did and what I do recommend is that you need to start educating yourself. You need to start trying new things. You need to start looking at. I love the concept of ikigai, which I'm sure you're familiar with
mm,
Johnny. Is
yeah.
that you find that place where you can bring value to the world and you can get compensated for it, and you find ways that you uniquely can add value to other people. And so my first three business endeavors, Johnny, were actually while I still was working full time. All three of them failed miserably because I was really good at sales. I was really good at marketing. I didn't know how to run a business though. And so what I was doing though in that process is I was doing something that was uncomfortable,
Mm,
unfamiliar to me, until eventually it started to become familiar. And once it became familiar, I started to develop a sense of mastery. I developed my business acumen. I learned more about how businesses work. I learned more about myself until I got to the point where I was familiar enough with owning my own business that I could segue out and make that transition, take that leap. There's a phrase people use, you get the boat as close to the dock as possible before you step off. Versus what most people do is they just run down the dock full force. I'm quitting my job, or I'm leaving my spouse, or whatever. I'm like, I'm done with my health problems. And then they try and jump off and they just end up sinking and they're soppy and wet and life kind of just sucks worse. And so if you can get that boat as close to the dock as possible by consistently doing things that you're unfamiliar with so you grow, it
Mm.
creates this transformation inside of you to where eventually you wake up and you're like, okay, I can do this. I know what's necessary. I'm familiar with it. And my subconscious mind has let go of me in a way to allow me to do that because it's no longer screaming in the background, danger, danger, danger. This is going to potentially sabotage your security. It's still scary. Don't get me wrong. But that was the transformation that had to happen where the redefining myself just came from consistently putting myself in situations that I was unfamiliar with, where I felt underqualified, where I felt like I wasn't deserving to be there. And over time, you develop and grow until you're like, wait, I can do this. I can do this. And then you've developed the confidence necessary to take the next step.
I love that. I can think of a couple of examples from friends of mine as well. Like, I had one friend, she's running a very successful like business at the moment, sort of a coaching business, kind of helping, well, helping others kind of develop their like purpose and things like that. But she went out and then was doing like little challenges like, how could I make like X amount of money and serve X amount of people in this space of time, and kept doing it again and again while she was doing her job. And then so that kind of concept makes sense there. And I've also known someone who just jumped out and had no experience and things didn't go so well. So it's like, again,
Yeah.
things may go well, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense when I was thinking of a couple of examples in my own head.
Well, you really want to do what you can to stack the deck in your favor. And I love the definition of luck that says luck is where preparation meets opportunity.
Mm,
Because when you've prepared, and let's just take health as a great example, right? Someone may wake up and they say, well, I want to make this significant change in my health. But if you're not consistently doing something that's unfamiliar, like getting in the right amount of water every single day, getting 10,000 steps per day, starting to stretch and go to the gym and start doing these things that maybe you've never done before, that are very unfamiliar to you, you won't be able to cultivate the confidence necessary for you to stand and feel like, man, I'm an athlete, I'm a runner. And an example I use, Johnny, is this all comes down to identity. If you identify as a runner, that means that you run, right? It'd be very weird for someone to stand on stage and say, I'm a runner, but they never run. Why? Because they don't believe that about themselves, as proof and evidenced by their choices. But if you show up every single day with consistency, whether you look like a runner, you sound like a runner, you feel like a runner, if you do that with consistency, eventually what ends up happening is you build a track record of undeniable proof. And you can look back over a week, over a month, over 6 months and say, wait, I've been running. I'm a runner. Whoa, I'm a runner now, right? And it all came from doing the thing that you were unfamiliar with until eventually your identity changes. And so this is true in your health, it's true in business, it's true in relationships, and it's true in every aspect of our lives. The problem is that we don't cultivate the necessary habits and we don't have accountability in our lives. We don't have a circle of safety of people that we're accountable to that will hold us to a higher standard. And we try and do it on our own. And when you try and do it on your own, I'm not saying you can't, but you're making it exponentially more difficult for yourself because you're trying to push past all of these limiting beliefs about who you think you really are and what you think you're really capable of and the potential that's inside of you. Whereas if you have someone like I did, that like a coach or a mentor or someone alongside you that is constantly reminding you of what's possible, it allows you to push through your own limitations and to achieve significantly more than you thought possible. And then eventually you wake up and you're like, whoa, I am actually this because I have a track record of undeniable proof. I did what I didn't feel like doing for long enough. I did the unfamiliar for long enough until it became familiar and my identity changed.
With the identity,
Hmm.
Because like in personal growth you hear all these I've heard it multiple times, and these things about like identity statements, in like the Tony Robbins world, or like
Hmm.
Joseph, my mentor, or even a few other guys I follow. So in your kind of like experience, and even sort of like working with people, even if your identity is something like you want to be like this millionaire or whatever, you need to start
Hmm.
building the habits of looking after your money and earning money in order to actually feel that. Is that what you're kind of going with?
Kind of. It's a similar vein as that, I was actually writing something last night about this, specifically about how money can buy happiness, but not in the way that most people think.
Mm.
Because most people are very, very confused about what money is and what money does. And Myron Golden talks a lot about this. I love. And so what I got to do for a season of life, I'm a former speaker and head trainer for Tony Robbins. And in that world, I got to really immerse myself in a lot of this mindset identity work. And one of the things that I discovered that was truly incredible in rubbing shoulders and speaking with just these incredible men and women is that who they are behind closed doors sometimes was not who they presented as on stage, but there
Mm.
were other times where it was 100% who you saw on stage was who they were behind closed doors.
Mm.
And it was interesting because what I started to discover is that at the end of the day, perception is reality, right? How we perceive a person is our reality of them. It's how we think that they are. But what we don't consider is the other side. What happens when you become that billionaire, but you've sacrificed what matters most along the way? That you haven't cultivated healthy habits. You haven't cultivated a great relationship with yourself. You haven't cultivated an incredible relationship with your partner, with your kids. You will achieve the significance that you think is yours to have by being quote unquote successful, but you will still have the mental demons and the emotional demons to battle with every single day because you'll feel like an imposter and you'll feel like you are still not good enough and there's still more to come. And the reason that that happens, Johnny, is because when it comes to, we'll take money as an example. Money is simply a tool that we can use to help us accomplish things. If you're chasing being a billionaire or a millionaire and you don't really know why, you will completely miss the boat on what is required to create an extraordinary life because you'll pursue all these things thinking that they're going to give you or buy you an identity. And to a degree, you're right. It will buy you an identity that is perceived by other people to be that you are something that you're not, that you don't feel that you are. And what I mean by that is that everyone's going to look at you and think, oh my gosh, they're extremely successful. And I have these conversations all the time, Johnny, with the people you see on social media. They're pulling in $1 million a month, $10 million a month. They have all of the accoutrements of success,
Mm.
but they're still breaking inside. Not all of them. Some of them are extraordinarily beautiful human beings who have fully embodied that identity. And now being super successful, they just get to pour out. They are just blessing other people and giving value. And they're confident in who they are. And if they lost it in a moment, they could rebuild it in no time because
Mm.
it's who they are. It's not about the things that we purchase or the things that we surround ourselves with. They're not what create our identity. Our identity is what creates the external reality. And when you can do that, and when you can cultivate that internally, it's this beautiful process because then you find the happiness that you're looking for. You find the fulfillment that you're looking for. And you realize that at the end of the day, when it comes to building a beautiful life and being successful, it all comes down to who you think you are. If you don't think that you're somebody, if you don't believe that you're somebody, and I'll use a simple
Mm.
example here. There's a big difference between shame based identity transformation and guilt based identity transformation. Okay. So shame based
Mm.
says, I am a failure. Okay. Guilt based says, I failed.
Mm. Not
One is
defining
tied.
yourself as it, yeah.
Exactly. One shame based is I am
Mm.
this. I am a failure. And if you say that to yourself or you believe that about yourself, then by extension, you are going to have behaviors and actions and feelings and thoughts that align with the identity that you hold about yourself. So you're going to continuously fail, 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 fail. And it's just going to reinforce what you feel about yourself. Versus when you have guilt based identity transformation, this is very useful because then what you're confronting is not your identity, it's your actions and your behaviors. You're saying what I did failed. This business activity failed. This conversation failed. This new creative endeavor failed, but it's not indicative of my identity. When you identify as successful, I am a success. What that does is that reprograms the success mechanism in your mind. And this is talked about, Dr. Maxwell Maltz talks about this in psychocybernetics.
Mm.
I'm sure Joseph talks about this a lot too, is that when your identity, I am a success instead of I am a failure, that means that everything you do, all your behaviors, actions, feelings, everything is an extension of your identity, which means that you really can't be a failure. You may fail at certain things, but it's not something you take on as your identity. And so what I discovered is that if you don't have a good relationship with yourself, if you don't see yourself the way you want to see yourself, then you need to use guilt-based identity transformation to confront the patterns, the habits, the behaviors, the choices, the time management, your routines, the relationships. You need to lovingly confront yourself on
Mm.
the changes that need to happen in order to create the alignment necessary for you to become who you want to become. Otherwise, you'll live in this land of shame, which is
Mm.
I'm unlovable, I'm a failure, I'm worthless, I am not good enough, right? And when you say those things and believe those things, it's no wonder that your results just reinforce that, because that's who you believe you are. And so if you want to transform who you believe you are, again, it's these small steps into the land of unfamiliarity. And you do that with consistency, which is the hardest part, which is why I huge advocate for accountability and coaching and mentorship. You need someone alongside you who can help you through that process until you can get to the point where you're like, no, I know who I am. This is who I am. And this is what I do. And there's a confidence there that only comes through the cultivation process. It's something that you cannot manufacture.
Mm. So with just touching on sort of like accountability, and I think I really like what your distinction on, first of all, on guilt base and shame base. I think that's a really powerful one because I think might be, and I've certainly been in in that boat, so I can definitely relate. So like whether it's like tried like a business idea and it's like, oh, it's not work. Oh, I'm a failure, you might say, or like a relationship not working out. What's wrong with me? I am wrong. No one wants to be, rather than, oh, this relationship failed or this date failed or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, yeah, I've heard friends, say that kind of language. So again, being really, really intentional with your language and catching those patterns. So I really
Yeah.
like the distinction there, what you've drawn with like the accountability and like trying to find support and groups
Mm-hmm.
for people, because often I've tried to go alone. I know people I've worked with or talked to have tried to go alone like before previously. How do you go about like finding that support? Like if someone's just like, right, I need some support, where can they start looking?
So it's a great question. The first thing that I tell people that are looking for support is that you have to position yourself to be attractive to it.
Mm.
And that's a really challenging thing because you've probably heard the old adage is that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Mm.
Is that a lot of times the mentorship that we're looking for and the coaching that we're looking for, the advisors that we're looking for, you have to think about what they want, right? What do they want? What they want is they want to invest time, energy, and resource into someone that they believe truly wants to succeed in a given area. If you've got a fixed mindset and you have a victim mindset, or you're constantly complaining, or you have this woe is me attitude, you're going to be very, very hard pressed to find anyone who wants to help you, simply because most of the people that have overcome these things, they understand that you have to do some of the work yourself. They're not there to be positioned as a savior. And that's the mistake that a lot of people make, Johnny, is that they're looking for support because they think that someone will save them from their situation. And any great coach, any great mentor, any great advisor who's worth their salt knows that they never want to be in a position of operating as a savior for another individual. All that they want to do is to be a guide. And so a guide means that you have to be willing to, like for me, when I'm working with a client, if someone is super needy, if they're in a victim mindset, they're constantly complaining, their woe is me, that all they talk about is all the reasons that they can't. they're not a great fit for me. And I'm not excited to work with them because they're just going to, it's going to be constantly like pulling teeth, dragging them, trying to help them. And I've realized that if you are in that position where you want the support and the help, you have to start this process on your own. But if you're willing to commit to it, you will very, very quickly attract into your life those people who want to give to you and who want to pour into you. And so that means sometimes you do have to get outside of, again, that unfamiliar zone by putting yourself into rooms that maybe you don't feel like you're qualified to be in. You need to go to events. You need to get plugged in with communities. You need to hire a coach. You need to work with a mentor. I know, Johnny, you've told me all about the stuff that Joseph has helped you with over the years, right? You've got to think about how a lot of times for people like us, those were what sometimes people call serendipitous moments. How it just, we just, people would say, you just got lucky. No, it's not luck. It's where preparation met opportunity. Is that if you are doing this work on yourself and you consistently are patient, but you're saying, I'm open to it. I want to grow. I'm curious. I know I have the ability to do this. I know that I can, I'm not seeing the results, but I'm committed. You will attract people into your life who want to help you because that's how we feel. That's how we feel. And anytime we want to help other people is that we want to help someone that has a mission and a vision and a drive and a get up and go. We don't necessarily, I mean, we may love those people that are wallowing in the pit, but I don't know about you, Johnny. Anytime that I get around those people, they just suck the life out of me. I call them energy vampires, you know, and it's hard. And so it's a long-winded answer of saying if you need accountability, you want accountability.
Mm,
One is attracting it into your life, but two is that you have to look at investing in yourself. You've got to think about their time, their energy, what they've got going on in their world. And if you can't invest in yourself, well, that's something that you can actually set as a goal for yourself. I want to invest in this for myself. So I'm going to work extremely hard to save up the money or to go to that event or to buy that coaching program or
mm,
to get to that conference or to whatever it is. Just get in the room because I have found that 98% of it, and I know you know this, Johnny, is just continuously showing up.
mm,
Like you'll win if you just keep showing up. And that's what's really, really hard because sometimes if you really get into the depths and where it's really, really heavy, a lot of times people don't need coaches. They don't need mentors. They don't need to be going to conferences. What they really need is they need therapy. And I'm not a therapist.
mm,
I'm not qualified to work with those types of individuals. But if someone's in that low, depressive, self-deprecating, hateful state, that is more of a work that needs to be done in a therapeutic context, which is very, very different than coaching, as you know, because coaching is taking someone, just think about soccer, football, right? Big, internationally, football, biggest sport on the planet. Great coaches look for great players. They're
mm,
not looking for the kid who's whining and complaining and moaning about how their cleats
mm,
don't fit and the pitch is uneven and the goalie is too big or anything like that, right? They're looking for the great players who they can make even greater.
mm,
So if you become a great player, you will attract and magnetize to you great coaches, great mentors, great leaders who want to support you and help you become even better.
mm. Certainly relate to that in my own experience as well. Like my last two coaches, for example, that I've worked with, like I worked with a somatic coach, and I was like, I want to go even deeper. I'm making this intention. Suddenly shows up, hire him, and it's like. Then the next one I've just started working with, it's like I want to do a lot more of like healthy masculinity sort of work on myself, and he just
Yeah.
shows up. Hear him on the podcast. It's just so, and you certainly can relate to what you just said as well. But yeah, you've got to be. I like what you said about you being willing to do the work. And also, one thing I've kind of noticed is it's not to say you're not going to moan and get into a negative mindset from now and then, but it's just like, but snap back out of it a lot quicker. But yeah,
Yeah.
I get what you mean. If you got someone constantly in that state, right? That's maybe a therapy matter, or maybe just well, it's not a fit for you. So
Right.
certainly relate to that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I love what you said too, because you know this, Johnny, is that you're proving it by the work, and I'm proving it by the work that I'm doing, is that just showing up and serving and giving value and adding to the world and trying to put ourselves out there to serve and help, that is attractive to the right people, right? And it's actually quite scary and off-putting to the wrong people. And so just the fact that you're showing up right? That is what oftentimes positions you for those quote unquote lucky moments, because you've been preparing and preparing and preparing, and then an opportunity presents itself, and then suddenly you get quote unquote lucky.
100%. I want to go a little bit back to like purpose and meaning a little bit, because you're in that position when we're going in the early in the conversation where you're like, I want to start a business. You know, that's what you knew what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
I mean, at the start, was it? Did you know what business you wanted to do, or was it just like a business?
That's a great question. I didn't. I knew that I had some marketable skills. So my
Mm,
background is in sales, and I knew that I was really good at sales and I was really good at marketing. And
mm,
I felt like those were two things that because I knew I was qualified to start a business. And what I didn't understand is that they're two completely different skill sets. And
mm,
so the first three businesses that I tried, I just failed miserably. It was early on the social media marketing world and doing email marketing and then doing Facebook advertising and things like that. I was trying to marry my skills with a business. And then it wasn't until I really got the opportunity to do some of that coaching and training for Tony Robbins and one of his teams that I started to discover more and more about how I didn't really fit the mold. My whole methodology is informed by empathy. And so that's why my clients call me the fierce empathy coach, is that I'm really good at creating an environment where people feel safe, where people feel seen, heard, understood, known, and loved. But simultaneously, I can earn their permission to speak the hard truth in love and ask them extremely uncomfortable questions in a way that causes them to open up and to share what's really going on. And so, in short, I can get past the masks really fast, really, really fast. And so, without established relationship and trust, that can be dangerous, though. And especially when it's not invited. I've learned that the hard way. I always have to ask permission to coach people. But that led me into high performance men's coaching. It led me down a road into business consulting after I really got my legs under myself in my own business. I now own 4 different companies. And so it's grown and evolved as I have grown and evolved, but that's only come through massive amounts of failure, quote unquote failure,
mm,
failing forward, right? And recognizing that these failures weren't final. They were teaching me something. I was learning and growing. But yeah, early on, all I knew is that I wanted to find a way that I could help people and serve them well and create tremendous amounts of value, and they would be happy to pay me in exchange.
yeah.
And so that's what led to what I do now. And it's a blessing, man. There's no better feeling than when someone pays you and they're grateful to pay you
Mm,
because they know how valuable it is. And it's a significant rewarding process, and it's very fulfilling that I have people all over the world that send me a lot of money to listen to them and to talk with them and to ask them the tough questions that no one else around them is asking. And a lot of times that takes the frame of men's coaching. So we have a men's coaching program called The Ardent Man, and
mm,
it's ARDENT, accountable, responsible, disciplined, empathetic, noble, and true. The Ardent Man. And in that program, what we do is we help men become unstuck, heal, and harness their power to reclaim their identity. And so there's a lot of times I'm doing it through that frame of personal development. But what I really love, Johnny, is that on the other side, I take all of those skills and I do it in kind of a business consulting capacity as well. I've got companies and leaders that are managing tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars in their businesses, and they're simply wanting to lead their teams well. And they need a sounding board. They need someone that is really strong on people skills, which for me, that's my whole entire world. I
mm,
love people. I love understanding them and what makes them tick and why they make certain choices and what their behavior looks like. And so I struggled for a long time, Johnny, because I thought I had to do like a physical service, if you will. And I didn't think that people would value people skills. Right. And so I discovered I was wrong. And there are tremendous leaders who they're great at what they do, but they don't know how to navigate relationships. They don't know how to navigate tough conversations. They don't know how to get out of their own way. They don't know how to stop self sabotaging. They don't know how to fix their poor habits. They don't know how to stop scrolling and snoozing and doing all of these things in their personal routine. And so I've been able to take all of these, and whether it's in speaking or coaching, consulting, or in the businesses that I run, And really, I'm just in the business of helping people to get out of their own way and to become the best version of themselves. And I tell all of my clients this: I'm not successful unless you're successful.
Mm.
My success is is only if you're succeeding. And so that's what I pride myself in, is that I tell people, I'm not trying to make you more like me. I'm trying to make you more like you, who
Mm.
you really, really are. Because most people I have found, Johnny, they don't really know who they are and they really don't know what they want. And so it's an honor to get to help those people that I get to serve every day.
Oh, amazing, David. It's a lot. It's really interesting what you said about leaders as well. I mean, remember even like working in career, and there's a lot of training going on for leaders who had been kind of promoted or got to somewhere because of their expertise.
Mm-hmm.
You never know a person's challenge, so the beauty of helping people, their people skills sounds really rewarding for you as well.
It is.
Enable to Enabling them to do that as well. The reason I kind of went down that route a little bit with, you were a little bit unsure with what route you did, and then it's kind of taking you down this direction
Mm-hmm.
eventually. Who knows, maybe it'll turn somewhere else in the future, but as with all of us. But I was just asking for the individual who might be, I don't want to be like in this job, this career, I really
Yeah.
don't like it. I have
Yeah.
no idea where I want to go. And I was just wondering kind of what your initial guidance would be to them.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I have a working definition of purpose that I think is very useful, because everyone's always talking about, how do you find your purpose? How do you find your
Yeah,
purpose?
yeah,
Right.
been there.
And I think that we all really, really overcomplicate it, because in any other context, and I'll give an example here. Um, Johnny, what is the purpose of taking a shower?
To clean yourself.
Okay.
That'd be my purpose. That'd be my definition.
Beautiful. What's the purpose of eating food?
To fuel yourself with,
Okay. What's the purpose of giving someone a hug?
to create love and connection.
Beautiful. So, in every single one of those instances, purpose is nothing more than an action to be taken to create a specific result. So, if you want to be clean, right, you take a shower. The purpose of taking a shower is because you want to be clean. The purpose of giving the hug is because you want to convey love. The purpose of eating the food is to fuel yourself. And so, in almost every other context within our lives, when we define what it is that we want, we get crystal clear on what we need to do in order to get it, right? If I want fish and chips, then I need to get my butt in the car and go drive down to the pub or to the local restaurant for my fish and chips. My needs, every single person, what you need to do to change your life is predicated on giving yourself permission to define what you want. But most people don't know how to do that, unfortunately, Johnny. Most people, they'll just give you a laundry list of everything that they don't want.
Mm. It's a Joseph the London classic. It's always the, what do you want? What do you want? And he's like, no, 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 I didn't ask you what you don't want.
Exactly. And it's interesting because most people will give you some arbitrary answer. Well, it's like, well, I want $1 million, or I want more sex, or I want, this, I want that. But they don't actually understand why, because most people haven't taken the time to set an intention and to define with precision, this is what I want. I want to be clean. Okay, well, how do I get clean? I need to take a shower. Okay, well, now the purpose again. And so, if you want to infuse your life with purpose and meaning, it's not about some arbitrary, huge, ambiguous goal out there. Yes, I'm all for having huge, giant, big, hairy, audacious goals. I'm big for, I love having 20, 30 year goals. I think I have a good idea of where I'm going to be in 20 to 30 years, but I am not clinging to that in my daily activities. And I think that the guy, Ryan Holiday, who wrote The Obstacle is the Way, he's written a bunch of bestseller books. He's a great author.
Mm.
He talks about how he doesn't have goals anymore. And I think I agree with him, because I have completely eliminated almost all of the goals in my life except for the long term ones. And I have completely transformed and upended my world into simply having daily standards.
Mm.
Because I know if I maintain a daily standard in my health, in my mindset, in my intellect, in my marriage, as a father, as a leader, as an entrepreneur, if I have daily standards that I can check the box every single day, there is no possible way that I can't grow. It's impossible. So I'm literally making it impossible for me to not grow by having set daily standards. And to your point, life may take you here or there, this direction. I'm not trying to fix to some aspirational goal of saying, like, I want to achieve this thing. I'm looking into the future and thinking about, okay, to the best of my ability, the version of me that I see in the future that I want to be, my ideal self, my aspirational identity. When does he wake up? What does he eat for breakfast? What does his day look like? How does he interact with his kids? How does he treat his wife? How does he speak to his team? How does he manage his health? How does he handle his evening routine? And when I can start to think about the man that I want to become, it creates this beautiful alignment with what I need to do today for
Mm.
me to every single day develop into that man. Because again, it's not about the external. The external is never what's going to bring you fulfillment, purpose, and meaning. It's all about the internal. So if you want to be fulfilled, then what you need to do is to do things that fulfill you. If you want to have more meaning in your life, then what you need to do are things that are meaningful. And so when you start to simplify it, what I found for me, Johnny, is that for someone who's asking this questions like, okay, I want to answer this, I want to have more purpose, or I want to take the plunge or whatever it is, I tell them like, I'm not saying goals aren't useful. They are. And I like the SMART goal framework: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. It's a great framework. But even more so are standards, daily non-negotiables in my life, because I know that if I can hit those, I will inevitably grow and get better. And all that I'm doing is I'm not aligning with something I want to achieve. I'm aligning with who I want to become. That's what inspires me and motivates me and consistently pushes me to get better and better and better every single day. Because I know if I do that, I will continuously be more and more and more fulfilled, have more purpose, have more meaning, have more passion and more joy. And I actually have a lot more energy to do a lot more things.
Mm. You're reminding me, it feels, a lot more empowering that way as well. It's not like waiting for something to happen. You're actually living it now as well.
Yeah,
It reminds me a lot of Atomic Habits, the book by James Clear as well, with the
great book.
identity-based habits as well.
Mm-hmm. It's a great book. I love it.
Yeah, big fan of that one. Um, yeah, and he's got some good like YouTube as well on that one. But yeah, the Ryan Halliday one, got to check that one out as well. Um,
Ryan Holiday's a great author. He's written a number of different books,
yeah.
uh, and he talks about that. One of his most popular ones is the obstacle is the way.
Mm.
And that's that zone of familiarity we were talking about at the beginning, is that the obstacle that we're facing is our own unfamiliarity, which means we have to go through it consistently over and over and over again until eventually you realize, wow, it's no longer an obstacle. I developed the strength and resilience, and I've now become familiar with this. So now I'm on the other side of it.
Mm. No, I love that. I'll have to check it out. I think that's quite a powerful message to really like leave us with here, David. I know we could go on for a bit longer. I really like how the daily standards. I also remember, I think it was Keith Cunningham talking about that in a Tony Robbins event as well. How he didn't have goals, he had standards. So I love
Yeah.
the powerful way of that. So yeah, just before we sort of wrap up, David, be really useful to know where the listener can find you if they want to reach out, they want to find out more about your groups, your work, because I
Yeah.
know you're doing a lot. I see you post a lot of content always, which is great on Instagram.
Thanks.
And then if there's any final point you wanted to leave us with as well, uh, feel free to do so. That'd be great.
No, I appreciate that, Johnny. Yeah, so anyone can, like specifically men, if you're a man and you're looking to get unstuck and you are looking to become the man that you said that you would be, and you want to heal the things inside of you that need to heal, and you're looking to harness your power, the ardent man, you can just search theardentman.com. You can go find me on social media. It's in my link tree, or just shoot me a message. We'd love to explore a conversation and see if our community is a good fit for you. It's community and coaching, so it's a paid membership, but it is an extraordinary community. And for anything else, for speaking, podcasts, for any type of coaching, typically for one-to-one coaching, it's very rare that it makes sense unless there's a deep established relationship. So usually I tell people, if you're even interested in coaching, we need to get to know each other first. So just email me, message me, and we'll create a conversation, explore it. Um, but yeah, you can find me. You can Google my name, David Waldy, find my website, any of my social media handles. And for anyone listening, if you just reference this podcast, I'll know that you came from Johnny, and make sure that he gets encouraged to knowing that he was a connector for us. And so, but final thoughts, Johnny, man, the thought that I would say that is most important of everything that we're talking about here is that most people spend their lives and they don't invest them. They spend their lives trying to figure out, what do I need to do to fix my health? What do I need to do to fix my finances? What do I need to do to fix my relationship? And we talked about questions at the beginning. And what
Mm.
I'd like to just pose is that maybe those aren't the best questions to be asking. Maybe there's a better first question. And maybe that question is, who do you want to become? Because when you can start to give yourself permission to define who you want to become, what you need to do gets really clear. Because then you're simply creating alignment with this future version of yourself. And you're thinking about, would future Johnny do that? Would future David do that? Is this the lifestyle that future me, is this when I would wake up? Is this when I would go to bed? Is this the food that I would be consuming? Is this how I would treat myself? Is this the future version of me that I want to become? Would they do this? And if the answer is no, it's very easy to cut that out of your life and say, okay, that's not the person I want to be. And you do that with consistency, and you visualize. So I know it's a term a lot of people love, is that it's true. If you visualize who you want to become, what you need to do will get crystal clear. Instead of just spending all of your energy in trying to fix all these external things, you'll start to invest in becoming the person that you always wanted to be. And you'll start to realize that the more that you invest in yourself and becoming that version of you, the more your external circumstances will have to change by extension. Your reality must shift in direct proportion to the internal work that you do. And unfortunately, most people have it backwards. They think if they can just have the marriage and the house and the car and all the stuff, that they're going to feel different. And they don't. And so don't get it backwards. It's an inside out job.
Mm. Love it, David. Thank you so much for that final point and everything you shared today. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Johnny. It was an honor, brother, as always.
Awesome. So that concludes our episode for today. And remember to lead with your heart and not with fear.